It seems inevitable, doesn't it, that this book would begin with apple pie. Easily the single most famous pie, if not dish, in the United States, it harkens all the way back to the country's beginning, and even well before. It's no surprise, then, that apple pie parallels America's birth. Originating on foreign shores, the dish arrived in the New World with British colonists before evolving with the early United States, culminating with the first truly American apple pie recipe arriving at nearly the same time as our Constitution. Ultimately, the story of American apple pie's creation is that of America's itself, and telling that story means going back to the very beginning. American cuisine is a vast, deeply multicultural landscape, with influences from a remarkable number of cultures that have relocated here. To say that it is exclusively Western, European, or British would clearly be misguided. Yet in a general sense, there still exists a certain through line of British and Western European influence that speaks to this country's start as a collection of not very well-treated colonies. Coincidentally, or not, the first time apple pie was consumed on North American shores. Obviously, it would be not only naive but also dumb to pretend that Western Europeans were the first people to call this verdant landmass home. And indeed, the next chapter of this book dives deeply into the influence of indigenous people on the United States of America and on our collective pie consumption habits. But in tracing the thread that eventually became both apple pie and the Republican democracy that we know of as the USA, we typically begin with the first of the British colonies. Of course, that's not really where it all began either. Rather, we might go even further beyond that, back across the pond and into England. Because here, amidst a monarchy and a lot of ale and some very dirty streets, is where our country really originated, with some royal charters authorizing the colonization of North America. It's where our beloved apple pie got its start as well. And if we want to get the full lay of the land and go very deeply down the rabbit hole, we could go all the way back to ancient civilizations in the Mediterranean, where both modern Western government and pie originated. Unsurprisingly, both looked a little different way back then. Pie, for instance, had an oil-based crust that was pretty nasty tasting and basically inedible. It was also mostly savory at that point, built on the basic concept of enclosing meat in a pastry made from ground wheat and oil. Government, meanwhile, was mostly democratic in nature and occupied almost exclusively by white men who all hated each other. So, actually, maybe only one of them has evolved in the last few thousand years.